Nate from Sheetski. I thought it would be really fun to create for you a video walking through creating your budget using our spreadsheet. So here I've got Google Drive open, and you should be seeing my screen. First thing you need to do is upload it. So to do so, you're going to take this plus sign and new on the top left corner, click it, and go to File Upload. Then you're going to select the spreadsheet from your files. Hopefully you've just saved it in a place where you can easily access it. And then now that it's in your drive, double click it and open it with Google Sheets. Now, if this is your first time uploading the sheet and opening it in your Google Drive, there are a lot of design elements in the spreadsheet as well as a lot of functions in the spreadsheet. So the first time that you open it up, it may take a little bit, but every subsequent time that you open it, it should open faster. I couldn't tell you why. I'm an accountant, not a programmer, but that's just how it has been in my experience. Here we go. This is the Sheetski Monthly Budget Spreadsheet. And the first thing that we're going to do is not enter anything. We're actually going to want to create a copy. The reason that you do that is as you're filling out the data in any given month, you're going to fill it up. And then when you start the next month, you won't want to delete everything that you've done just to start over on your budget. It'll be nice to start fresh. Also, if you're working and maybe there's a happy accident that's not so happy and breaks your spreadsheet, because we at Sheetski didn't lock anything. There are some prompts and things in there to keep you from making mistakes, but they can happen. So what we'll do is make a copy, and to do that, go to File, Make a Copy. And I like to name my spreadsheets the month and year that we're working on. So September 2020. And it's going to create the same exact spreadsheet. So that way, when we get to October, we open up the monthly budget spreadsheet, the same one that we had just open. It'll have this name. You can name it whatever you'd like. And then you make another copy. But here's 2020, all set to go. And I like to go to the enter month, September 2020. There, that's in there. Next thing that I recommend that we do is write a goal. It's good to have a goal. And it could be anything from wanting to save money to making a purchase that you want to make. Or if this is your first time making a budget, maybe it's as simple as making and keeping a budget. That's a great goal. We at Sheetski believe it's a good first step in any financial journey is to just make a budget. And there is no shame in where you're at. It's all about progress and to get back on the horse and to continue to budget and to continue to push and to better your financial situation. So, goal, making and keeping a budget. Now, we've set up this first sheet into 4 sections. We have the My Budget Savings Summary up the top left, my income, my expenses, and my bank balances. Each of these kind of serve as a summary and data entry point to kind of give you an at a glance of everything that's going on. But the first thing that you're going to want to probably do to set up is to fill out the My Bank Balances section. So there are many different types of banks. I think I'll want to start with this column here and not the name, as I've got it set up for 5 different types of accounts. You have checking accounts, you have savings accounts, you have HSAs, which stand for Health Savings Account, which is tied to your insurance policy, your CC, which is a credit card, or line of credit, which is represented by LOC. So you're going to use this to set up all of your bank accounts. And then you have your starting balances, which is the balance as of today. So if today is the 15th of September, what I recommend is don't try and go back and recapture half the month's worth of expenses and the balance as of the 1st and then work your way up to the 15th. It'll be a lot of work and it may not be worth it. It may be discouraging. So I recommend just start from whatever day that it is and track it to the end of the month. So that way when you log on to your bank account, then any transaction that has happened has already happened and it'll be easier to track down what your starting balance is. So what I'd like to do is just clear this and we'll just start from the beginning. So let's start and maybe have a couple of checking accounts. So maybe we have a Wells Fargo account. Let's just name it Wells Fargo. Bank type, checking. Done. And starting balance, I log on to my bank account, check what the balance is, and as of today, that balance is maybe $851.22. Just some random number off the top of my head. Now for my second checking account, the nice thing is this column, the bank name, can be whatever you want. So if you want to be a little bit more creative and do something like my main squeeze, you are more than welcome to do so. And just to keep things straight for you guys there, I'll maybe put that little checking there. Because it's fun to be creative and it's fun to do what you like. So here's an opportunity for you to do so. Maybe starting balance for my main squeeze is a little less, which is ironic, and I like irony, is $252.52. Good number there. Now, maybe let's put in a credit card. So maybe you have a Capital One, Captain One, CC, and maybe the balance is, let's say, negative 500. Now, the reason I put a negative is twofold. As you're using in the spreadsheet, you'll be able to keep track of expenses that you charge to your credit card. And so it'll continue to track the balance. And so it'll track it as like a negative account. And then the second reason is it's a good reminder that it's money that we have due eventually. So we have the credit card in there. And then maybe we also have an HSA account. It'll be important when we get to inputting your paycheck. But HSA, House Savings Account, and we got a category for that, HSA. And maybe we have $1,220 in there. And then do we want to add anything else? Yeah, let's just do a savings account. Savings, I don't know. Let's make it more fun. Savvy Savings. It's great. 2 V's, right? I think so. And then make it savings. And I don't know. Maybe you've gotten a windfall. Windfall of $5,000. Maybe you got more. Maybe this is not your first rodeo and you've been working hard at saving money. So here, now this should represent all of your accounts. We've given you X amount, but you don't have to fill them all up. You can have this many filled up and it's good to go. Now on the bottom of this section, you'll notice that there's a total available balance. This 1103.74 represents all of your checking account balances. So the reason that I didn't include anything else is because I wanted this number to represent what you have readily available to spend. You do have in a lot of accounts readily available savings to spend, but I wanted to treat that more as a savings account and something that you don't want to readily spend. So that way when you open up the spreadsheet, you can see if you wanted to make a big purchase, if you had to dig into your savings account or not, which I did also put a place for the savings account balance up at the top here. We have total savings plus HSA. So this number is the total of any HSA account or savings that you have available. And then if anything changes throughout the month, it'll show here. So this will either be a negative money if you've pulled more from your savings or a positive number if you've put more into savings. Now, if I change any of these bank types, so let's say, this CC is actually a line of credit, then I can just change it. No harm, no foul. But then if maybe this savings account is actually a checking account, you change checking, you'll notice that this number changed down here and this number changed up here. So I think that's pretty neat. And you probably, if you don't already think that's pretty neat, the more you start to use spreadsheets, the more of a nerd you will start to become. So that is the rundown of the My Bank Balances section, and this should be ready to go for your balance. This should be ready to go for your budget. The next section that I recommend tackling is the My Budget Income. The reason I like to do this section next is it's good when working through your budget to know how much you expect to have so you can work through your expenses. So I do have some numbers already in here. And notice that the design, Zach's brainchild, really good idea, is this blue border with the white inside is meant to represent areas that you don't input any data yourself. And anything that has the every other line, similar to like what a check register might look like, is where you can enter information. And we tried to keep that consistent throughout the entire spreadsheet. But here, the income categories is where you can name your income sources. So I gave you a few examples just to help you out. We have employer paycheck, side hustle, friend knows me, gift, unexpected income. And you can name these whatever you want. I'm not going to be too creative. That's fine. but I'm going to delete these 3 because I'm just going to focus on the side hustle and the employer paycheck. So unlike down here where we entered it, let's say you accidentally entered $2,000 here, even though that's not exactly where we designed it to be. So if you had done that, you'll notice that as I click into the cell below it, that up at the top at the formula bar, you'll see a formula. And since I entered it manually up here, that formula will not be there. It'll just be 2,000. So this is what we call a happy accident. That's secretly not so happy. But to undo a happy accident, it's not too difficult. If you're using a Mac, you press Command Z, and it should go back to the formula. If you're using a PC, it'll be Control Z. If that doesn't work for you, or for whatever reason you can't remember, and that's okay, you could just go to Edit, Undo, Redo. Simple as that. And if it's too far gone, you always have the blank sheet monthly budget Google template to start over from. Obviously, it's not fun to start over, but as you're learning to use a spreadsheet, it may happen. But I promise it will get better. You will become more efficient. So we name all of our income sources, and then where we're going to write down the planned income is actually on the income tab. Now here's the income tab. I've broke it down into 2 sections. One is the paycheck and income entry. The second is optional. It's if you want to keep track of your paycheck details. Things of like your gross amount, your federal and state withholdings, FICA taxes, insurance amount that you're withholding if you're putting money into retirement, and the HSA. We'll go over this section with the HSA. It's pretty cool. But this is where you're going to, on the left here, enter all your planned income. So I'm going to delete some of these details just because I'd like to walk through it together. Let's start with planned income, the amount that we expect to make on a given paycheck. So let's just say I expect to make $1,200 any given paycheck. And I'm going to get paid on the 5th. And the type of income, if I press this down arrow, you'll notice the names of these are exactly what we listed on the income section on the budget tab. So I'm going to select employer paycheck. And I actually have it direct deposited into my main squeeze checking account. And then the actual section we can leave blank for now. Then I also get paid a second time, $1,200, and I get paid on the 20th because maybe I get paid twice a month. Employer paycheck and my main squeeze. Now we also have my side hustle. Now you can choose to do this in many different ways. I prefer to keep track of it every week in what I hope to make. So let's just say my side hustle, I hope to make $200 every week. So I'm going to say the 7th. And this is going to be categorized as side hustle type. And maybe I'll put this into my Wells Fargo account right there. And then you can either enter in everything subsequently like this, or what you could do is highlight. You can click and drag, or you can click on a single cell, hold shift, and use the arrow keys to go over whichever one you like. You could, there's many ways to skin cats here, but not literally, only figurative skinning of cats. And you can copy it. When you copy it, you know you've copied it because you see this dotted line on this section. And then you highlight this section and then Command V to paste it. And then all you have to do is change these dates to 1 week. So this is now my planned income, which I've highlighted it, and it should show me a sum down at the bottom of $3,200. I expect to make $3,200 this month, which also shows up here. $2,400 from employer paycheck and $800 from the side hustle. So now our planned income is all set up. Now comes the really fun part, the my budget expenses, planned expenses. This is where you get to write down all of your bills and all of your monthly expenses. We have it segregated into those 2 types because of how we want the spreadsheet to work and design and give you information. The bill is simply a bill. It's a one-time expense that happens. It could be your rent. It can be, I've got many things listed here: rent, car loan, insurance, student loan, credit cards, subscriptions. But it's the big idea is that it's just a one-time expense. And then you have monthly expenses, which is something that you're going to keep track of in a category that you choose. I've got plenty of examples as well: groceries, dining, shopping, gas, coffee, etc. And these can be whatever you would like. That's the fun thing about spreadsheets, as I've said many times and will continue to say, is that you have full control over what this is going to be and how it works for you. But for the sake of helping you understand this, we're going to go ahead and just clear it and start from scratch. So we're going to clear that. And I usually like to start with the big things first and list all my bills. So we're going to have rent, and that is a bill. And the due date is on the 1st. And maybe your rent is $450 because maybe you got a really good deal. Next, I might do credit card bill. That's a bill. Maybe that's down on the 15th. Maybe your minimum payment's $89, which you can choose to do more than that if you like, or you could do less if you don't have the cash flow. But I recommend putting the minimum payment. That tends to be most helpful. Then maybe those darn student loans. Well, I suppose in this case it would be that darn student loan, but maybe you've got multiple. But in this case, that darn student loan bill, maybe the 20th, for $350. Then we have a phone bill on the 8th. Maybe that's $89. What else we got here? Utility. Now, the thing about utilities is it is a bill, but it's a variable bill, excuse me. So what do? I recommend making a conservative estimate. And the more that you do the spreadsheet, the more you'll start to see the pattern and you'll get more accurate in your estimate. So maybe you have got that due on the 18th as well. And you're going to guess it's $80 a month because you live in a larger apartment and you've got central heat and cooling. So $80. Phone, utility, how about internet? That's a bill. 11, maybe $40. Subscriptions. Maybe you got Hulu. I think that's $9.99. Maybe you've got AMC, like my wife and I do, because we really love movies. So we are actually A-list members because that's what we choose to do for date night. It's a lot of fun. But we are not sponsored by AMC A-list. So that's a freebie, AMC. Freebie promotions here, because we're all about value. If you don't value something, you don't have to pay for it, or at least you hope you don't have to pay for it. So those subscriptions, if you get value out of those subscriptions, keep them. If you don't, dump them. It's up to you. Let's see, what do I got? Rent, CC, student loan, phone, utility, internet, Hulu, AMC. I think that's good. For the sake of examples, I think that's solid. Now, here comes the fun part, is all of those monthly expenses that are variable. Now, you can either be super specific and track it in terms of Whole Foods versus Cub Foods, or you can keep it just broad and keep it groceries. Or you can be fun and break it down into, this is my produce, this is my dairy, this is my junk food, this is my ice cream, whatever you'd like. The world is your oyster. Maybe you have an oyster budget of how many oysters you buy, because maybe you really like oysters. But I digress. Groceries, monthly expense. Now, the due date for a monthly expense, you could put a number here, but the spreadsheet will disregard it. If this cell here is a monthly expense, the spreadsheet it will just disregard it. It matters for the cash flow graph that we've created, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But you can leave it blank. I tend to leave it blank. So let's maybe say you yourself are hoping to spend $600 on groceries. Then maybe you have gas or transportation, because maybe you do a combination of car and busing. Maybe you want to do $120 for that. Excuse me. Maybe you have shopping, and you want to keep shopping to, maybe $150. If you have a partner or if you have a spouse, maybe you are trying to keep your budget together. One thing that I recommend is maybe creating spending that you two can have your own. So that way you each have the same amount and you get to use it at your discretion, whatever you'd like to do. This is how my wife and I do it. It works really well for us. So maybe 100 for the husband, 100 for the wife. Maybe you want to do some giving. I recommend, even though it is not an expense, it's just giving. I recommend keeping track of it, planning for it. And that's simply what you're doing here. So maybe you like to be generous, and maybe you like to try and give 10% of your income. So in this case, that might be $3,200. So that would be 320 at 10%. So you're going to put that down there. And then maybe you want to save as well. And maybe you want to try and aim to save as much as you've given. So we'll do 320 there. Let's see. We have groceries, transportation, shopping, husband, wife, giving, savings. Maybe you want to keep track of coffee because you're like me and spend a lot of money on coffee and want to try to keep that to $50 a month. Maybe you've got pets and you like to buy them lots of things, but you want to keep, here's a happy accident. So if it doesn't fit within bill or monthly expense, this prompt will show up, which simply means select from the drop-down menu, monthly expense. Happens. So maybe I want to spend $100 on my pets. No more, no less. Now, I've gotten through a lot of budget categories that I would like to keep track of. And you'll see that up here, I've got unbudgeted money of $217.01. Now, what you could do is I recommend creating a miscellaneous category. Many times throughout your month, you'll realize that you don't get an oil change every month, and you don't take your pet to the vet every month, and that might be more than $100. Anything can come up. And so I just like to do a miscellaneous budget, but maybe we'll just call it a junk drawer. And that is where I'm going to put the rest of this. And the reason I do that is because I like to plan for everything. And I recommend you do the same, to have a plan for everything that you expect to make. So I'm going to do $217.01 here. Or another thing that I can do is if I don't expect to have a junk drawer of $217, this is where you can make adjustments to your budget. Maybe I want to give my wife a little bit more spending money because I don't spend as much, and then I'll just move it from here. Because you know what they say, happy wife, happy life. So now we've balanced our budget. And it says here, perfect budget. It looks like your budget is planned. Now, if you're under, it will say under budget Monday. Find a place in your budget for this money. Or if you go over 117.02, it'll say overextended by, and it'll show you the amount to help you figure out where it goes. Now, if you have money here in the junk drawer, and you have an overextended by amount here, and the math isn't simple, let me just make an example. 2052. That's good. So now you have 89.52 and you have 27.49. Here's a fun tip or trick. Highlight this cell and stick an equal sign in front of it up on the formula bar. So equals. And then we're just going to, since we are unbudgeted, we're going to add the 27.49 to the 89.52. So we need a plus 27.49. And bada bing, bada boom, you got a perfect budget. So that's another tip and trick here for you. Another thing that you may have seen as I'm putting in this data, is it goes really fast. I'll teach you another trick. When you press the tab key, it goes to the right. If you hold shift and press the tab, it goes to the left. Same thing if you use the arrows. But then if you press enter, it goes down. Now, here's the cool part. Put in an item, make it a monthly expense, making sure I'm pressing tab as I go over. The tab is really important, not the arrow key. It won't work if you do the arrow key. And then $50. And then instead of pressing tab here, you press enter, and it goes back to the cell in which you initially pressed tab. It makes data entry much faster here. So that's another fun tip or trick. So now we have just finished our planned budget. And as you can see here, total planned income, $3,200. Total planned expenses, $3,200. We have a perfect budget. Our balances are all correct to what they show on their online statements. We have our total savings ready to go. Our planned budget's here. Fantastic. Now I want to point you to the insights page. And this graph in particular, the planned cash flow graph, I created this because I wanted to show people where in the month they may be low on cash by the bills that they have and their monthly expenses. The bills are noted by jumps. I think it's easily seen here on this example on the 20th. You'll see that you have a nice jump here. So any jump is a bill, and then the line represents the total monthly expense that you have. So for example, to show you, if I change this groceries from a monthly expense to a bill and slap a date on there, 15, and go back to the Insights page, you'll see that on the 15th, it jumps here. And that's just an example of what that graph does. So the reason that's so important is a lot of times companies are willing to work with you on the date that you have things due. So using this as an example, I finished my budget, everything that I plan to spend and everything that I make. And I see here, man, I might be strapped for cash on the 17th. Are there any ways that I can make an adjustment to this graph or to my bills? And I see that anything beforehand, the 11th, the 18th, the 15th for the credit card bill, maybe I can negotiate that this credit card bill is actually due on the 25th. Same thing with the utility. It's a larger expense. Maybe I can also do that on the 25th to make an adjustment. And maybe since I have more money at the beginning of the month, maybe I can also negotiate to have the phone due at the end of the month as well. Since I have the big expense of rent at the beginning, now let's go back to the Insights page and take a look at that graph. And you can see that it is much closer together. So this is designed to give you an idea of your expenses and to try and match your income with your expenses. But this is just the plan, and what you plan and what actually happens is different, which is why we actually have the actual cash flow. So as you are using our spreadsheet, because you can once you set it up, that's the heavy lifting part. The second heavy lifting part is tracking it throughout the month. As you track it, this number, this line rather, will represent the amount that you've spent. And by the end of the month, it will show you where your cash has gone and when it is gone, to give you an example of, does what I actually spend match what I plan to spend? And how can that information inform me of how to manage my money? So this is I'll just be outright. This is my favorite feature of this spreadsheet, and I think it is super helpful. And then we've also given you a couple different graphs. We've given you an expense percentage graph. So as you click on it, you'll see rent as a number and a percent for all these given categories. And this will be more colorful, more beautiful the more you use it. And then we also have a number of transactions by category and average. So the reason that this is great is you can see I've got 2 transactions, and the average amount of transactions for shopping, and they should be lined up here, is $25. So I can say to myself, all right, so every time I go shopping, I spend about $25 and I do it this many times. That's useful for coffee, for groceries, any way that you can. The more information that you receive about your spending habits, the easier it is to say no and to defer gratification. So that's a quick rundown of the graphs. I could have given you more, but I really wanted to just give you what was important and to not overload people with information that maybe isn't as helpful as others. So that's the rundown of the Insights page. Now that we have everything planned, we now have to record things throughout the month. And I want to start on the expense tab. So the expense tab resembles the check register. And the check register is this archaic thing that you used to use to keep track of. Whenever you wrote a check, you'd write down when you spent it, the date, what you spent it on, the amount that it was, and then you do some mental math, and then you write down your new balance. We now live in such a fast-paced world that that's not practical anymore. So a couple things that I've done to make this easier, and hopefully that this is designed in such that it makes using it on a cell phone easier for you, so you can do it at the cash register instead of trying to do it once a week, to make it a part of your regular habit, as the check register was once a part of your habit. I have this little balance up here. This is thanks to Zach. This was his idea. He's a smart guy. I need him because I cannot design a spreadsheet this beautiful. I can only do the numbers. But this was a really great idea. You'll see Wells Fargo, My Main Squeeze, and Capital One. These three accounts are the current balance as you've used the spreadsheet. So we have a couple of transactions in here, and we'll go over how to enter a transaction in a minute. But this will give you up-to-date balances of everything that you have entered into here. So if you've been up to date with it, this should represent what you have in your account, which is super helpful instead of trying to log in and see how much you have before you spend. You can create a shortcut on your phone that'll take you right to this spreadsheet. Another reason why we designed it for Google Sheets as opposed to Excel. So we'll see here Wells Fargo, My Main Squeeze, and Capital One. Oh, happy accident. Command Z. And the available balance all shows up on the expense tab. So as you're entering it, it'll update these numbers. And then even as you're scrolling, those numbers will stay up on top. So you never have to scroll up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down to make sure that you don't overdraft and that all your numbers are exactly as they should be. Now, I've got a number of examples of these transactions to help you if you're not watching this video. But since you're watching this video, we'll go ahead and delete these and just enter a few together. So maybe on the first, you spend $70.25 at Whole Foods. So now we're going to select from bank name the account that we're spending from. So either Wells Fargo, Capital One, My Main Squeeze, HSA, so on and so forth. But let's just choose My Main Squeeze. And then I'm going to select a category. So if I select this down arrow, you'll see all the categories that we created back on the budget tab. Now you could just click the arrow and select it, which on the mobile version works really well. But if you're using it on the computer, you can simply just start typing in what it is. So for me, I'm going to say this was groceries. Press the down arrow and you'll see it slightly highlight and click tab. And so that's all you have to do to enter an expense. This transfer to bank name is specifically for transfers, and I put this note up here. And this memo line here is for you. If you want to keep track where you go, so if Whole Foods is where you like to go, and also Cub Foods, then you can kind of see how much do I spend at Cub Foods versus how much do I spend at Whole Foods. So maybe on the 4th, I go to Cub Foods and spend $40.26 from My Main Squeeze for groceries, and I'm going to make Cub Foods the memo. And that's up to you. You can keep a memo, not keep a memo. Now let's do a couple other entries here. 11. Let's say this was $90 from My Main Squeeze for my cell phone bill. My cell phone bill. Now when I go back to my budget tab, I want to show you something cool. Here we planned that $89 would be spent on the phone. But since we spent $1 over, now we have $90 here, which you can keep it as is. It's up to you. Usually I recommend changing it under happy accident. In this case, sometimes it doesn't work. You have to press enter first because it's still selected. Command Z, there it is. How to fix, we're fixing happy accidents all the time. So back to what I was saying, you can, if it was a bill, you can leave it, but let's say you overspent in a certain category, and let's just go ahead and write down a couple of these expenses and we'll walk through that. So maybe on the 22nd, you spend $125.35 from My Main Squeeze on groceries again. And maybe on the 25th, we spend maybe you threw a really fancy shindig and we invited everybody and had the best foods and we spent a bunch of money on groceries. And then we go to the budget tab. Oh, we're not quite there. Goodness gracious, that's a lot, except for groceries. Let's just change this to 500, make it easier. And we'll change the junk drawer to 21701. Okay. This is an example that can commonly happen when you're going throughout your budget and you see, man, I did not put down enough money for groceries and I've overspent by $56.04. You can leave it because it's there for your information, or you can use it as an opportunity to adjust mid-month. So maybe you say, well, since I still have to buy groceries for the next, maybe it's 1 week, maybe I'll increase this to $6.50. And then this will say, okay, I'm still overextended by 150. So where have I not spent 150 that I can move it from? Okay, shopping is exactly 150 and I haven't spent any money there. So maybe I'll just put 0. Maybe I just won't buy any pants this month. I think I could live with that. So that's an example of adjusting mid-month, and it's completely up to you if that's helpful to manage your money or if you'd rather just leave it so you can continue to see where you've overspent, so that way next month when you use the spreadsheet, you can use it and quickly see where you need to maybe adjust your monthly expense categories. So another couple of examples that I want to go over is, one is just the transfer feature. So if I go to this expense category and do the drop down menu, you'll see that there's a transfer there. I did that. I gave that to you. That's for you. It won't affect any of the balance, or excuse me, it won't affect any of the budget. So you'll look here and see that it's not affected. But it's there so you know what you did. So let's say I'm just transferring $250 because I've spent a lot of money out of my main squeeze, and I see that the balance is negative $393. So maybe I notice that I'm spending a lot of money from it and I just need to move some. So I'm going to move it from my Wells Fargo account, from bank name, transfer it to my main squeeze. And maybe it's got to be more than this 250 because we want it to be on par. So let's make it 400. And we made that on the 20th. So now you will see that my main squeeze has a balance of 649 and the Wells Fargo has a balance of 451.22. So now we have made a transfer. You can keep track of that. Here's another scenario I want to run by you. So maybe we have that credit card bill, right? And it's also a bill, but it's also a balance. So on the 25th, we have $89. So let's deal with that. Expense tab. Oh, I've already forgotten. On the 25th, $89. Okay. 25th, $89. We're paying it from maybe the Wells Fargo because we've got money from Wells Fargo here, but not from my main squeeze. So let's make it Wells Fargo. And we go transfer. Now we transfer it to the Capital One card. But wait, it is a transfer, but it's also a bill because this transfer won't affect the budget. So it won't show up here under the CC bill at $89 unless we say that it's the CC bill. So let's go ahead and change this to the CC bill. Now the balance has changed. The Capital One has now gone down by $89, closer to 0, and so has Wells Fargo. So now you have not only taken care of a bill, but you've also taken care of your balance. So as we go back to the budget tab, we have the balance, or excuse me, the actual matching the planned. So that's fantastic. And another thing that I want to point out is now that we've gone through a few times, we can now see how this expense graph might actually look in comparison to this, because this is just an estimate, so it's going to look a lot straighter. But this will show you a little bit more of your spending habits. Here's that fancy party. Okay, now real quick, I just want to go over the income. I think it's a little bit simpler than the expense tab, but there's an important feature that I want to go over. So the planned income. So let's say we're every 2 weeks or every twice a month. I think that's what I put here. We're going to make $1,200, but it's never the same. So maybe it's $12.89.21 because I work an hourly wage and it's a little bit different every time. So maybe I'm going to say that my actual check was $16.50 and my withholdings was maybe $220. State withholdings was maybe $125, and then FICA and Medicare tax, you can put that down here. And then insurance, maybe $125, and retirement. And that check will do the math for you, so I would have to make some adjustments here to make that fit. So for example, I'll just ignore that because I don't want to waste your time and do a bunch of math. But the thing that I want to show you is this HSA account section here. This is where you adjust the balance of your HSA account, since most of the time, if you have an HSA account, it's coming directly from your paycheck and you won't see it otherwise. So here's where you would get to enter that and keep track of it if you so choose. You're not required to, but I wanted to put this here so you could track it. So in this case, I've got $150 every paycheck going into my HSA account. Now you'll notice that this little red triangle is shown up here and it says invalid. This will happen because of this input does not match any of the accounts listed here. And since I put some accounts already on the spreadsheet, you'll have to make the adjustment. So here I'm going to just select HSA and then tab through. And then back on the budget tab, you'll see that your HSA account has gone from $1,220 to $1,370, and also that your savings has increased by $150 total, and your new balance is right here. So that's a fun feature that I wanted to include just to help you track more and to help give you more information. That doesn't necessarily affect your bank account, but your HSA account, instead of logging on every time you need to use it. Now, the HSA card, if you so choose to use it, will still show up here. The only thing you need to know is if you don't have a category for it. So let's say if you go to the doctor and you need to pick an expense category and you don't have medical, you have to fit it somewhere. So if you'd like to keep track of medical, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. If you want to keep track of your balance and not affect your budget, you could simply just do the HSA account is where I'm spending it from. I went to the doctor, spent $125 on the 8th, and then the expense category, I'm just going to do transfer. So it's going to lower my balance for my HSA account. It's not going to affect my budget, but if I'd like to, I could. So there's just many ways that you can use this, how you so choose. How in-depth do you want this information? And it's there for you. Now, as I mentioned before, hopefully that there's this reference page. So this sheet has not described all the features of the spreadsheet. You can always go here if you forget how something works, or you want further examples of how this spreadsheet can track certain things. We also have that Facebook group page, Sheetski Money and Spreadsheets. We recommend and ask that you would join this group because it's where we answer questions and concerns that you may have. And if we make any adjustments to the spreadsheet, we want to be able to post it there for everyone who has already purchased the spreadsheet. And if you have any further questions on the spreadsheet or concerns or bugs that might show up, that Facebook group is where we can answer it. But so far, I've gone through every aspect of the spreadsheet that I think is pertinent to setting up your first budget. I want to thank you for hanging out with me during this little marathon. This was a lot of fun for me. I really enjoy this and hope that this brings you a lot more information and comfort and eases your anxiety that you may have about budgeting and finances, and hope that you find fun in making progress. Thanks again for your support and supporting Sheetski. I hope you have a great evening and be well. Bye now.